This kind of looks like one here. Not a glaring example, but still above average buying into the exact high. There's not been a lot of this that has occurred lately. A couple's on some of these lows right here. If you take a look, kind of smaller delta bars, and then a decently larger one at the bottom, creating a bottom. Here's a nice example of one actually. Okay, we've got this big rotation down, little blip from buyers there. We're drifting lower, drifting lower. Boom! Big delta hits. Well, essentially we finally stopped someone out is what that is. Um, let's try to find one more good one and then we'll move on. Some ones that look like they don't work through this sequence here. Some like right here would be a potential capitulatory type top where really what happened here is that the market just had a bunch of energy. I don't know if this was post news release, something. It had a lot of energy to be able to sustain this for quite some time versus kind of capitulating like would be more normal. Here's actually one on this low. It's not perfect, but you kind of potentially you didn't see any selling initially as this thing went down, and then you kind of capitulate here, and then again stalls, comes into this kind of DVA level, which we're going to talk more about, and then you see a big push and a sharp short-term order flow shift. The thing about that I love about these is that number one, they are more rare, so therefore they're kind of more impactful. They could be very important. And number two, it's not something that a lot of people are looking for or listening to. A lot of times people are looking for to simply go with strength versus actually using a measurement of strength as a cautionary signal. That's what I love most about these. They're very cool. Some of you in the chat saying we've got one at the hard right edge here. Absolutely. Right? It didn't end up changing anything in terms of where price was. But this is a decently a really nice one here 3 minutes ago that occurred right here. Good eye. Late rotation capitulations can and do happen more frequently in some markets than others. For example, I think that the place where I really cut my teeth on these was in the S&P. I feel like the S&P likes to do these perhaps a bit more frequently, that is, than the Nasdaq does. These are really good signals, though. Just like anything else, not all of them work, but it's a really nice signal. Doug says, do you weight a delta capitulation pattern more or less the same than price capitulation, or do you handle differently if you only get one of them. I'm not big on just a standalone price capitulation in general. I think it's factored in with some of the things that I look at. A lot of times those type of things happen around stop run areas. So that kind of already lumps it in with another category. But I really focus on the delta capitulations relative to price rhythm moves, um, and within the DVA framework and whatnot, which we'll get to look for the ones that make the most sense. Divergence, probably the thing that most people first start to realize about order flow in some sense. And let's make a real quick point on time frame. Let's take a look at a different time frame. Look at how that changes things. So here's a 1500 volume bar chart, which is a bit more standard in terms of kind of what is usually on my chart books and for my everyday kind of trading. 800's on the low end, which I'll definitely use. But we definitely saw a little push at the again, that one that we all saw earlier on all time frames was the big one. But we did see kind of another small version of it there as well, which is not really seen on the 800 because it took several bars. Now we have something of a at the hard right edge here, a short-term shift. But let's talk about divergences. It's very important that you guys understand it's a weakness. Everything we're doing is a measure of strength and weakness. So if price is in a downtrend and delta does something like this, that is a divergence. You have, remember, what's normal, right? This and this. You have to start somewhere, but at some point, remember how I said you have to go backwards? You have to establish what's normal. So we're just going to say that that right there establishes what's normal. We have a move up in price. What did delta do? Oh, about the same thing. Everything is normal. And then we have another down leg, right? Almost the exact same type of down leg with the same momentum and everything as we had on the prior down leg. But this is very different, right? Look at where that is relative to these spots on the price axis. Right? This is a lower low. And this is actually a higher low. It's a divergence, and it's a form of weakness. The sellers during this red down leg at A were weak. They did not show up with the same amount of energy and aggressiveness as they had been under more normal condition or relative to what has been normal for that movement. So what does this mean? It means that from point, 1 to point 2, that there was less net aggressive selling than has been typical. So it's a bullish indication, right? It's a short-term order flow signal that says, hey, this at the hard right edge here, this last down rotation, we don't know if the down rotation is going to stop here or keep going, right? We're going to look for momentum shifts and things like that. Maybe a late rotation capitulation we could combine with an order flow signal. That's the thing we'll get to, is combining order flow signals. But all we know is that the sellers are showing us that they're not as strong as they have been. They're a little bit weak. These signals occur frequently. Unlike late rotation capitulations, we'll be able to go find a bunch of these. In fact, hard right edge, just on a very short-term basis, let's talk about it. We saw, essentially this down move here, getting pretty granular here with this view. I hate to start out with such a short-term example. Change the color. We put in this low here. Well, it even started before then. Again, what did I do just now? I went backwards to assess what happened. We kind of talked about how it was a little bit pushing into the low. The sellers tried after kind of stalling. The sellers came in and tried. And then we rotated up, and we're just being super micro here, but I'm just going to zoom in and just show you what I'm seeing. We're going to go find some more standard examples after I trick you at first with the real super quick example. There's no selling. Look at the hard right edge. Look at the hard right edge. There's no selling. We're at the lows, and the sellers are weak. That's essentially the example I'm trying to get to here. This has happened a couple times at this low. It happened right here as price went all the way back down near this low. Okay. You see that? And now it's happening right here in an even better way. We come from this high at this square, from this square here. We have a nice leg of downward rotation here. This is all very micro, okay? And look at this. Flaggy, weak. So I don't know what's going to happen next from here, but if there's a momentum shift out of this price leg down here, buying coming in, trying to make that happen. We'll talk about, we could talk about that later, but then that's an indication of there's a short-term shift underway, and we're seeing weakness from the sellers as they tried to continue this big. Remember, the context is this is a big sell-off, right? So there you go. You kind of get the short-term, the momentum shift with price. So essentially, that would be just a rudimentary example of only putting together the comp sets that we're talking about here. We're not putting together anything else. It's not like a real fantastic trade, but the entry would be right here to take advantage of kind of this entire situation with price and order flow here. Just based on the simple concepts we're talking through there. Let's go find some more easy to see standard examples. I took you into the granular world real quick there. Come back to normalcy. And let's go find some divergences, shall we? We were diverging into these highs today as price was continuing to press into prior highs. We establish, normalcy in a sense. All right. rotate down a good ways, rotate down a good ways, a little bit more than is normal, a little bit more, but not a big deal. And this overall movement here is fairly weak. It just so coincides with kind of a flag under delta neutral. But these highs were all the way back up at these highs, if not maybe a little stop run through there, right? But this is maybe not super, but this is fairly weak, decently weak. We see the continuation here off of that little example we were walking through. Fairly weak in terms of the buyers, right, into these highs. And that's really the point, this delta neutralization inflection and some weakness corresponding with it, right, led to where we are here. Let's go find some more. There's a bunch. They're all over the place. It's almost hard to identify them all. Let's real quick. Let's find because I want to be super honest and realistic with you guys. This down move here was super weak. This up move was super weak. As we keep going backwards, we can find more and more things. You have to pick a point though where you kind of establish normal. Let's just say that this down move was normal. Look at this. My goodness. Super weak as we retrace that whole move essentially. Very weak buying. You know what? In the concept of that, you can actually, because it's hard to go back and find everything just in hindsight. It's really much easier to do at the hard right edge, I believe, because you're bringing in all the contextual stuff. You're looking at the short-term pieces. You're adding that to the full picture. It's hard to just go back in hindsight with order flow and do all that work. So now that I'm doing that work, take a look at what I see right here. Chart just shifted. This decent bit of buying was actually into this high. It was kind of capitulatory within this very, very weak flaggy movement with price going quite a bit higher than where we'd even come from. So it's divergent and you get kind of this capitulatory last attempt. Kind of cool to put that together. Let's go find some more basics. I'm going to skip the tough ones, the ones that didn't work. I do want to show you some basics. Let's check the big sell-off yesterday. Not much there. Looks pretty normal just at first glance, right? A bunch of selling. Shift with the shift, right? Little flaggy price action with flaggy delta. It's just confirming it rather than really diverging. Sideways days. Here's a trend day. Let's go find, we're going to find a bunch of signals here where there's probably some divergence that didn't really lead to reversals. Here's one. It led to a down rotation, right? There's a little bit of a capitulatory move. You see this pattern a lot, right? You see, well, that's a capitulatory move in and of itself. And then you see the stall, and then you see a small capitulation. That's the last gasp, and then a turn. Major divergence starting in this section, right? We go from, higher highs in this area to not. Now, what actually happened here is something more complex with some absorption, but we'll talk about that later. Not sure if we talked about that, but a little capitulatory move there. I'm seeing an example of real weakness on a move, but not the type of divergence I'm trying to point out for you. There you go. Beautiful stuff right here. So we have this overall downward move, And things start to look a little dicey at this point in time, right here in particular. Okay. This down move, we're quite a bit lower than where we were after a flaggy sideways bullish thing, which happened right here. So here's the down move. Here's the flaggy kind of normal stuff. How much selling got us to this point? Not much. And then it becomes very apparent. Buyers, buyers. Sellers take us to a fresh low.